going to see the Olympics will think twice and realize that what's going on in China and what they're doing to Tibet is ongoing, and China does not deserve this honor to host the Olympics.
Canadian protester Sam Price calling on countries, including Canada, to boycott the 2008 Olympic Games in China. He and his fellow activists were deported to Hong Kong after being detained in Beijing for unfurling a banner along the Great Wall. As members of Students for a Free Tibet, they were trying to draw attention to human rights issues in the country. Lhadon Tethong, the executive director of the group, was also detained for blogs criticizing the Chinese government. We spoke to her not long before her arrest, and her father, T.C. Tethong, joins us now with an update. Thank you very much, sir, for coming in. And she was on the show just Tuesday, and again arrested shortly after she appeared on our show speaking out on this issue. How is she now? When was the last time you spoke to her?
Well, we spoke to her last night, and they just got to Hong Kong, and then they told us that they'll be leaving for Canada this morning, I think, 3 o'clock.
So she was cut off from Canada, she was cut off from you, she was cut off from consular officials, embassy staff for 36 hours. What happened to her during that time? Do you have any idea?
Well, she mentioned briefly that they took her for questioning, and she said that she wasn't sort of mistreated in terms of physical abuse or anything, but the questioning was a little bit intimidating at times. But somehow they got released, and they were sort of deported, I should say,
Deported into Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So she's on a flight right now, as I understand it, to Toronto.
Yes,
from Hong
with
Kong.
the other 2 colleagues.
Good. Yeah. So you must be tremendously relieved.
Yes, my main concern was that Lhadon, in the first place, having a Tibetan name, although she was born and brought up in Canada,
in Victoria,
a Tibetan name that really triggers a lot of difficulties with the Chinese authorities. And she did mention that they did allude to that, and they were questioning her, saying, "You're a Tibetan," and Lhadon said, "I'm Canadian, born in Canada. Father's Tibetan," but so at that. Having been born in Canada makes a difference with the Chinese authorities, because a lot of the dissidents, Chinese dissidents in the United States, who were born in China, many of them been arrested on the ground that they are Chinese, they are born in China, although they have a United States passport. So from that aspect, I was quite relieved to see that Lhadon didn't get that too difficult a time.
Shouldn't, I mean, and it's not as if you're a concerned father, but more or less an idle bystander. I mean, you worked with the Dalai Lama for 15 years. You've been very active in the Free Tibet movement. Again, I mean, working with the Dalai Lama for 15 years is quite extraordinary. So I guess she was brought up not only being very proud of her heritage, her Tibetan heritage, but also, I guess, learning from you, being active in this field, active in this cause.
Well, I suppose yes, because my involvement with the Tibetan thing was sort of goes from the time when Tibet was occupied by China in 1949.
Yeah.
And then later on serving with the Dalai Lama's office. Then also I've been involved with, many years ago, with these Tibetan support groups, and so it's been a long history. And trying to keep this Tibetan issue alive was sort of part of my struggle, yes.
And so my last question, maybe I can anticipate the answer, but I'm interested to know your opinion on whether or not, should Canada boycott the 2008 Olympics on the grounds of its relationship with Tibet?
Well, if you go back to the time when they had this Olympics in Russia, it was sort of, on the principle of human rights, there was a boycott.
Because of the invasion of Afghanistan in 1980.
But this time, well, yes, from one aspect, I would sort of like to see that. But then on the other hand, every person is saying that China should be given that thing. And the Chinese people I think, really are not the real cause of all this problem. It's the government, it's the system. So by giving them this Olympics game for 2008, I think in some ways the International Committee have thought of did not really take into consideration the human rights violation, but they said human rights would improve by this. But so far, it hasn't improved at all. In fact, there are more violations of the rights of the Chinese right in Beijing, their houses being demolished and journalists being barred from reporting, all this. So we don't see improvement. But in Tibet, it's far worse, because Tibet being under China, especially being a national minority group, there are special restrictions in China which many journalists and reporters don't see, except those who've been there.
Well, Mr. Tethong, we thank you very much, both as an activist and as a relief father. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.